Coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast is general manager Howie Roseman tapping into his 2017 self and trying to get creative to build his next contender through another NFL market inefficiency. We'll get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Tuesday edition of the show. We've got a podcast for you Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms, available as well in YouTube form. I should say video form on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase, LOE, and at GC24_football. Heading into the first week post-NFL draft 2022 edition. We're getting to that dead zone portion of the NFL offseason as we get ready for OTAs and mini camps. We've got training camp in a couple months. It's time for the summer. It's time for you to wind down, relax a little bit, take a deep breath, go to the beach. I spent a nice weekend this week after the draft in Florida, seeing my little brother graduate. Of course, though, that doesn't stop you, I'm sure, like it didn't stop me from maybe doing some 2023 mock drafts, checking out some A.J. Brown highlights, some Jordan Davis film. You know it because it's an exciting time right now to be an Eagles fan after the job that this front office, coaching staff, an entire organization did during draft weekend. Honestly, again, on paper, because everything on paper has to be taken with a grain of salt, but on paper, this is the most buzz I felt coming out of a draft about the Eagles since they drafted Carson Wentz in 2016. That doesn't mean the most buzz in general around a team, because the 2018 team, we expected to run it back and compete for back-to-back Super Bowls. 2019, we thought on paper that offense was even better than 2017. You can find an episode of Locked On Eagles where Gino and I discussed that exact topic. Like, that offense with Deshaun Jackson coming in, Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar looked more talented. But I'm just saying the work based on what they did during the draft with Jordan Davis, with trading for A.J. Brown, with it feels like stealing Nakobe Dean, and of course taking Cam Jurgens as well in the second round. And what I think they did on day 3 and in the undrafted pool as well was really impressive. There is a lot of buzz right now around this Eagles football team, and a lot of that has to do with their general manager, Howie Roseman, who just, again, continues to show his strength of being a GM when it comes to trades, understanding value, understanding how the board works, getting creative, and really rebounding this team from dark times, getting them back into contender status in a very short amount of time. This team has not taken 2, 3, 4 years to bounce back from a 4-win season and regime changes. Of course, now it comes down to, can the success be sustained? That has always been the biggest issue with Howie Roseman and these bounce backs. But when he was able to sustain it starting in 2017 and win this organization's first ever Super Bowl, how did that happen? A lot of it had to do with Howie Roseman getting creative, Howie Roseman recognizing a market inefficiency, a new channel in the NFL to find talent, young, inexpensive players that can help you win now, right? In 2017, that was a main reason you won a championship. And I read an awesome article on Monday morning from Sports Illustrated about that exact topic, about how Howie Roseman is almost running it back in that way in 2017, trying to find a new market inefficiency in the NFL to collect talent. And it's part of how he got Jordan Davis on Thursday night. It's how he got A.J. Brown on Thursday night. Part of how he stole Nakobe Dean as well. And again, it was brought up, and it makes so much sense for Howie Roseman's mindset and what he is thinking. So in this article, they talked about how across the NFL right now, picks are being, and we've seen it this offseason. This was the craziest offseason I've ever seen as an NFL fan. The amount of trades that have happened, including star quarterbacks, star receivers, pass rushers, you name it, across the board. The likes of Russell Wilson is getting moved, and Deshaun Watson, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown coming to the Philadelphia Eagles, Khalil Mack getting traded to the Chargers. I mean, it's been absolutely insane to see the movement across the NFL in an NBA-like fashion with high draft picks going too. It's not just like, Devonta Adams getting traded for a fourth. Like, that's how NFL trades used to be. You know what I mean? In the league, they would just take whatever you can get. Trades, blockbuster trades really weren't seen as a popular thing like they were in other leagues like the NBA and like the NHL. But now draft picks are getting thrown around like they're absolutely nothing. And they're top picks too. I mean, did you see how many teams this year did not have a first round pick? Did you see how many teams did have at least 2 firsts because they took advantage of the state of the league right now? And that, to me, is what Howie Roseman is doing, and that is what this article talked about. Because you see what the Los Angeles Rams did to win a Super Bowl in 2021. You saw the year before what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did to win in 2020. It's honestly kind of what propelled the Eagles into winning the Super Bowl in 2017. And I kind of think the Eagles started this era of aggression in trades, right? For notable names and giving up top picks and just being more creative in your roster building, right? It felt like there was just 1 or 2 kind of blueprints that the league followed up until that 2017 mark. And now it feels like all bets are off. Teams are trying anything to win a championship. Again, I think Howie kind of started this era in 2017 when he was dealing those picks, going up multiple times up the board to get Carson Wentz and involving players in those moves like Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso and trading for Ronald Darby in the summer, a player for player trade. Heck, this, you could even say this started the year before or 2 years before when Chip Kelly traded Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. Like, the Eagles kind of started getting aggressive before everybody else. And not just the Darby trade, but they also traded for Timmy Jernigan, who was a former, top prospect at defensive tackle that helped you win a Super Bowl. Jay Ajayi, you're giving up picks for. The following year, Golden Tate. The year after that, Deshaun Jackson. And now you've seen it go even crazier. Because even the Eagles back then, like for Darby, it was a 3 in Jordan Matthews. Timmy Jernigan was a 4th. Jay Ajayi, I think, was a 4th. Golden Tate, a 3. A couple late picks for Deshaun Jackson. Now you see first-round picks getting dealt multiple 1s, 2s, 3s. It's the aggression era in the NFL. It's the absolute arms race. And now, this article talked about it, Howie Roseman is kind of trying to find that new market that's untapped in the NFL. The article points to him doing the same thing he did before, which was starting to trade for players in 2017. And now, he was dealing away picks. He was kind of the F them picks guy before Les Snead. And now he's almost taking advantage of teams willing to give up so many future assets. And he's tapping into this new market, which is collecting. There are not a lot of teams around the NFL right now that want to collect draft picks. And Roseman talked about, it makes perfect sense that this article came out and you saw what Roseman did, because how many times have we heard in a press conference this offseason, Roseman talk about being creative to stand out. If you do everything the same way as other teams, it's a recipe to win 9 to 10 games every year. It's a recipe for middling and complacency. So you got to do things differently to stand out, like they did when they won that first championship. And I think that's what's happening here, as the article talks about. And I love it. Of course, take it with a grain of salt, because the Carson Wentz trade really helped propel you into many of these moves. And that wasn't really a calculated decision. You wanted Carson Wentz back. You did not want that to go the way it did. However, you also look at the trades they made with the Dolphins moving down last year, the Saints move this year, collecting future first-round picks and second-round picks. And it shows you that, Roseman is taking advantage of overly aggressive teams that are trying to win right now. And that's not to say that Howie himself is not trying to win right now. He's just trying to hoard draft picks like Danny Ainge or the Oklahoma City Thunder, if you will, right now. It feels like they have 30 first-round picks in the next 5 years. Like, that's not what Roseman is doing. He's using it not only, of course, to take advantage and have a bunch of picks for the future, because this team is still building with a long-term mindset in place, but it also does create more flexibility for his team to be aggressive when the opportunity strikes. It's why when you have 2 first-round picks, you can give one up for A.J. Brown. And it's why when Jordan Davis is falling there in the 12 to 13 range, and Baltimore is probably going to take him at 14, you can move up a couple spots because you've got multiple 3s, multiple 4s that you've collected over time, and that allows you to be aggressive in your own right too. So again, it's not like he's just punting on the now. He's having his cake and he's eating it too. He has created so much flexibility through this untapped market right now, which is draft pick collecting, that he not only was able to be aggressive, get A.J. Brown, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. It looks like they're one of the top teams to me in the NFC this year. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, but to me, they're one of the locks to make the playoffs. I think the Eagles should be considered a lock, not to, again, be a top 2 seed, not to win the NFC East, but you're damn right to compete for the division, to not just be battling for that 7th wild card spot like they were last year with a bunch of teams under 500. No, they're expected to take another step because they were aggressive. However, Roseman collected so much and he was so creative in this way that he still has 2 first-round picks next year. He still has 2 second-round picks in 2024. He didn't sacrifice the future like a lot of these other teams are doing. So I think it's more of a balancing act that he is performing right now. And I'm sure they'll go more in with the chips all the way in the center of the table when they feel like they know they have their franchise quarterback. Because again, you don't want to deal those future firsts when you don't know if you're going to need to use those on your next quarterback. But he's being aggressive and he's building for the future. Like, I just think the job he's doing right now is really impressive. And as this article points to, a lot of it has to do with taking advantage of how many teams right now are going all in on your 2017 strategy. Now, while everybody's zigging, you're zagging, but it feels like in a good way. My favorite quote of the story was this quote, "One thing Eagles people will tell you about how they operate comes with 2 simple words: no absolutes." I love that. Adapt or die in the NFL. Things change every single year. The way you built your 2017 team, can't do it again in 2018. Can't do it that way in 2019 or all the way to 2022. You got to be creative. You got to be willing to think on your feet and stand out, as Howie said. And I love that, especially in a league like the NFL, where there are so many hard-headed people that are set in their ways and think that there's one way to do things in talent evaluation with the draft, with trades, contracts, all this stuff. And it does feel really good that while there are a lot of flaws still in this Eagles team, and I think there are flaws to Howie Roseman, certainly as a general manager, to know that he is open-minded in this way and this team is willing to adapt and get creative feels really good because, again, it builds you more confidence that if this team did fall again, they know how to get back up. The issue will, again, come down to, can they figure out how to not fall at all? And we'll see, though, because right now they're set up pretty good and sustainably so, with young talent on both sides of the ball. And that has to do with, I feel like, maybe a new draft philosophy that this front office has. I want to get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. But guys, first, a shout out to one of our sponsors. It's Bet Online. I don't know if you guys bet on A.J. Brown going to the Eagles on day 1 of the NFL draft. Did you pick the Eagles moving up for Jordan Davis? Well, if you did, Bet Online, I'm sure, rewarded you. And there's a lot of awesome sports going on right now that you need to place your bets with Bet Online. When it comes to the NBA right now, they're in the playoffs. The NHL, the MLB is in full swing. You got the Kentucky Derby back coming up soon. There's a lot of sports going on right now in betonline.net. They're your number 1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. They're your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, so much more. They've got you covered. Make sure you head over to the website today on your computer, betonline.net, or you can use your mobile device as well to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, Louie DiBiase joining you on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Getting into how the Eagles, I feel like, are tapping into a new untouched market. I don't want to say untouched. Like in 2017, I feel like they kind of started the trade era. There were not many teams making as many moves as the Eagles, and I think it helped lead them to their first franchise quarterback in a long time, which helped lead them to their first ever Super Bowl trophy in organizational history. And so we got into that now about collecting draft picks and how he's having his cake and eating it too, having flexibility to be aggressive now, but also taking advantage of all these overly aggressive teams and having so many picks stockpiled, getting creative to stand out and not middle in this 9 to 10 win purgatory. And so that it was a huge reason, I think, that the NFL looks back on this past weekend and says the Eagles were one of the biggest winners across the entire NFL when it comes to the work they did during the draft. And so they're set up, I think, really well right now. And that's the thing is, like, even 2018, 2019, you knew that team was still going to be pretty good for a few years because of the veteran core that they still had from the championship season. But the Eagles really failed to extend that core with so many failed trades, free agent moves, draft picks. It doesn't feel like that now. Right now, when you look at the offense, yes, the glaring hole still is who is going to be your franchise quarterback. Can Jalen Hurts take that step now with A.J. Brown in house in this loaded offense in 2022? Are you going to have to use one of those 2 first-round picks or both to get your next franchise quarterback? Like, that's a huge question. The secondary right now needs a lot of work. Maybe James Bradbury, if the Giants release him, becomes your new CB2. We heard that the Honey Badger signed with the Saints yesterday, so safety right now doesn't look great with Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, and Kevon Wallace. There is certainly work to be done on this football team to get them into having me think that they can win a Super Bowl within the next year or two. However, this team does feel like it's set up way better for sustained success based on the young talent they do have. Like on offense right now, they look pretty set outside of just figuring out if Hurts is the guy or not at quarterback. Like they have their left tackle of the future, their left guard of the future, probably their center with Cam Jurgens now drafted, or again, Landon Dickerson. You got, as I mentioned, Jordan Mailata. Lane Johnson, to me, is not going anywhere anytime soon. You've got Jack Driscoll and Isaac Seumalo at right guard. Your tight end 1, your top 2 receivers are both under 24, and they're absolute studs. You've got one of the best burners in the NFL as your wide receiver 3. Miles Sanders at running back. I mean, this team on offense, to me, is one of the best young units in the entire league. And then when you look at the defensive side of the football, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, this is the first time in a long time that I feel like the Eagles drafted core defensive players that I'm saying to myself, yeah, that guy's going to be one of your heartbeats of this unit for 10 plus years, like Fletcher Cox has been, like Brandon Graham has been, like Malcolm Jenkins was, and Rodney McLeod. That's the way I feel about Jordan Davis, and that's the way I feel about guys like Nakobe Dean. They have not had that on defense for quite some time. So it does feel a lot more sustainable right now. Hopefully that, takes another step from good to great when the quarterback is found through Hurts' improvements or the next guy. And I think a lot of that has to do with, again, Roseman's bounce backs in the last 2 drafts. And I was wondering if there's like a philosophical change in the way that they're doing things now the last 2 years. And Roseman kind of touched on this a little bit during his press conference after the draft. He talked about in his press conference a few days ago, perhaps a more, a simple draft approach early on. Not that anything about the draft is simple. There are so many moving parts and different variables that change things. Like even the A.J. Brown trade might not have happened on Thursday night if, what if Jameson Williams falls all the way to 18? There isn't this run on receivers early where Drake London goes and Chris Olave. Like Howie talked about, that trade was dependent on if they can get an extension done and, how the board fell on day 1, because maybe instead of giving A.J. Brown $100 million and trading a 1 to 3, you sit there at 18 and instead you just take Jameson Williams to go with DeVonta Smith. But so again, a lot of moving parts, but I digress. Maybe the one simple thing, though, that Roseman has in mind has to do with like early on in the draft, which is where he has messed up a lot over the years. I honestly think it's been more simplistic in their late day 3 approach in the draft. It's why I think they found so many core pieces in rounds 4 through 7 and an undrafted free agency, because I think in those areas of the draft, in those rounds, it comes down to just like leaning on your scouting department, your front office, just pure football evaluation. Like, where can we get the value? Who has that upside? Who can we get to contribute right away? First round, second round, there's so much more to it. Excitement level, different strategies, different things that I think go into play that aren't in play maybe on day 2 and day 3. And now it feels like maybe that's switched up. Like Roseman talked about, and here's a quote from Zach Berman that was asked about Roseman during his press conference. When it comes to like the kinds of players they're taking early on, back-to-back years with high picks from national champions, right? DeVonta Smith, Jordan Davis, Landon Dickerson, Nakobe Dean. That's 4 players in the last 2 years in the top 3 rounds that you took from national title teams. And Roseman said this, quote, "I think experience is a great teacher. Sometimes it's just not that hard. Great players, great school, high recruits, play at the highest level. It kind of works. You want winners. You want guys who have done it." And that's interesting because the Eagles didn't used to do that. Listen to this. From 2014 to 2020, the Eagles had drafted only 5 players from a team that reached the college football playoffs. It was Jalen Hurts, Sidney Jones, Elijah Qualls, Kevon Wallace, and Joe Walker. In the past 2 drafts, again, as I mentioned, they've taken Smith, Dickerson, Jacoby Stevens, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Grant Calceretta from SMU, who was with Oklahoma in 2019 when Hurts took them to the college football playoff. They're taking great players now at great schools. And maybe it is just that simple, or maybe that's what this team needed, was to just simplify their early round draft strategy. And it doesn't mean they're just taking college production guys like they used to, i.e. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Derek Barnett. It doesn't mean they're having tunnel vision on certain roles like a deep threat with Jalen Reagor, you know what I mean? Or the backup quarterback with Jalen Hurts. Like 2020 was all about specific roles. It feels just more like it's simplified early on. Like, let's just take great players with great upside, at great schools. They won at the highest level. They fit this team. Everything just feels more well-balanced. Whereas before, there was a lot of tunnel vision involved in drafts from like 2018 to 2020. The last 2 years, it does truly feel a whole lot different. And I think it makes sense why we've all loved these last 2 draft classes. And that doesn't mean you ignore small school guys. You certainly don't do that, or you're going to miss out on Jeremy Chin. You're going to miss out on Kyle Duggar. You're going to miss out on Christian Watson. And, you know, you can say what you want about Carson Wentz, but you got an MVP year out of a North Dakota State prospect that helped you win a Super Bowl. So this doesn't mean only take guys from Alabama and Georgia. But at the same time, this team didn't do that at all before. They never took players from these elite programs that were winning national championships. They were taking TCU receivers over LSU receivers, and they were taking guys from the Pac-12 over the SEC. And again, each player, it should be individual. The evaluation should be about that prospect, not the program. I hate when people say don't take a receiver in the Pac-12 because of JJ, or a Pac-12 corner because of Sidney Jones, or now don't take a kid from North Dakota State like Trey Lance last year because of what happened with Carson Wentz. I'm not saying that at all. Everything's got to be contextualized, but sometimes it is just that simple. Like DeVonta Smith was the Heisman winner, the best receiver at the best school that won it all. And it just felt like for so many years, they just made it way too hard on themselves early on in the draft, and Howie was trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And now it just feels like he's just taking damn good players that feel like it's going to be really hard for them to become busts. And so that's really impressive. And a lot of these young guys now, they're going to be the leaders of the team. I mean, when was the last time you felt like such a large core of these leaders on this team were only in their first few years? Like, you look at what kind of leader Jalen Hurts is already at quarterback, and DeVonta Smith at wide receiver. DeVonta was an underrated leader for this team last year. I think Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata are leaders up front. You look at on the defensive side of the football, I think that's going to be Nakobe Dean. Like, I just think he's going to be the heartbeat in the middle of this defense. And you didn't have that. You know, you had great leadership with Malcolm Jenkins and Nick Foles, Jason Peters, Rodney McLeod, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham. And Graham and Cox are still here. Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey. Like, those are all incredible captains of this football team that are still going to be a huge part of your DNA this year. But now it feels like a lot of these guys you're taking from these top schools just have that leadership in them. And that's huge. I think when you have all of those young players growing that have that ability, there's a maturity to this team, and they're not all 34 and injured on the sidelines and mature. They're 23-year-old talented kids that also have that maturity and leadership. And that to me goes a really, really long way. To me, it's underrated. Like, I'm not a big intangibles guy and character. Not that, you know, it's very important, but you guys know I'm a lot about upside and about just pure talent and length and, you know, all that kind of stuff on the football field. But this kind of stuff too is very important. In 2017, you don't win a championship without maturity and without leadership. When you lose Carson Wentz, your franchise quarterback, your franchise left tackle in Jason Peters, a Hall of Fame running back in Darren Sproles, your best linebacker in Jordan Hicks, your best special teams player in Chris Maragos. You don't do it again in 2018 and 2019 without that leadership. You don't make the playoffs last year without it either. And so to see all of these young guys that it feels like are going to be a part of that next year, again, I just feel like this team, it seems way more sustainable. And who knows the level of that sustainability? It'll be predicated on quarterback, but the buzz around Philadelphia right now is absolutely real. And it feels really good right now to cover this football team. Guys, today's podcast, it's sponsored by rockauto.com. It's going to make you feel good as well when you're saving time and money on your auto vehicles. Right now, gas prices are just insane. So save time and money when using Rock Auto. Don't choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts for your car or truck from a chain store or a car dealership. Rock Auto, their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you can need. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. They're a family business, and they've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years now. Head over to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or your truck, and make sure you write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Eagles fans, Louie DiBiase wrapping up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. And I want to get into real quick, too, because I'm talking today about how the Eagles this offseason in the last 2 years have rebounded incredibly from, to me, one of the darkest times in franchise history to now feeling like one of the most sustainable winners in the NFC. And we talked about how that's happened through Roseman trying to, tap into another inactive market in the NFL right now, which is stockpiling draft picks. We got into, too, maybe a changing in the draft philosophy early on in drafts, like just keeping things simple with taking top players at top schools, very low risk prospects early on. Doesn't mean they're safe in a low ceiling. Like DeVonta Smith had incredible upside last year. Jordan Davis has that too. And, I think Cam Jurgens and Nakobe Dean do as well. And Landon Dickerson, so on and so forth. But those things, all of these things combined make you feel like this team knows what they're doing and they're on the right track to get back into being one of the top teams in the NFC. And that doesn't mean just being, again, a wild card team battling for the 7 seed. Right now, just like bringing in A.J. Brown and the work they did this weekend, their bet online playoff odds before the draft and before these trades, they were at plus 110. After the draft and after the A.J. Brown trade, minus 115. So the buzz around the league and in Vegas too is real with the Eagles. And that's not fool's gold. Hammer the Eagles to make the playoffs this year. Again, I think their ceiling is going to be capped unless Jalen Hurts takes the step where this passing offense is a top unit and they have all of the weapons to do that and the protection. It is up to Jalen Hurts now. There are zero excuses. So I still don't know until I see that if this team is a Super Bowl contender. However, when it comes down to this bet from Bet Online, like just straight up playoff odds, like how many teams can you guarantee are better than the Eagles this year? I would say the Rams, the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is that it? Maybe you could say the Cardinals, sure, but I can make the case the Eagles would be better than Arizona this year. That team folds in November and December every year. The Eagles always get better in November and December. And their roster, to me, is built just as good as Arizona's right now on both sides of the football. You look at the San Francisco 49ers, a team that made the NFC title last year. There's a big question mark right now with their quarterback. I love Trey Lance, but he's only had 2 starts under his belt. Deebo Samuel wants out. If you lose that kind of do-it-all weapon, he was a huge reason that offense could carry Jimmy Garoppolo to the conference championship, the Final Four in the NFL. The Eagles could be better than San Francisco. I like the improvements Washington made. I know everybody laughs at them trading for Carson Wentz, but they've got Wentz is throwing to Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson in the backfield. That defense looks really improved as well. A great coaching staff with Ron Rivera. It's a good team. The Dallas Cowboys should still probably be the favorite in the NFC East, but I can make the argument the Eagles should beat both of them out for the division. So hammer those playoff odds. Again, look at the spike from Bet Online. It was plus 110 before the draft and trades, and now after the draft and the A.J. Brown trade, it's minus 115. Rightfully so. This team is going to be, and even if they're a wild card team, they're going to be the 5 or 6. I don't think they're going to be the 7. And that's huge because that could be the difference between LA or Tampa compared to, Green Bay or Dallas, Washington, if you don't win the division. And I think this team can win the NFC East. Certainly. They have a chance of putting up a banner at Lincoln Financial Field this year. I don't know if it'll be the banner, but the buzz is real right now across Philadelphia. We'll continue to get into it all week long. 3 more shows for you this week on all podcast platforms. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well and hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. For now, though, I'm going to sign off. Again, thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure now the Locked On NFL podcast is your next listen. It is a crazy time in the league right now. So many storylines after the draft. Find Locked On NFL, all the latest news in under 30 minutes on all podcast platforms. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.